and welcome to VU Sports Wired. I'm Ben Weinrib.
And I'm Max Hers.
We've got a great show for you guys today. Just a quick rundown. We're going to talk about the men's and women's basketball. We're going to do our new segment, which is called Big Deal or Not a Big Deal. And we're going to shift over to tennis, go to baseball, and that'll do it for us here. So to start off at the top, Vanderbilt's men's basketball team, they had two big wins on the road. They went first to Texas A&M over the weekend. They beat the Aggies 66-55, and then went to Athens, took a roundabout trip, flew into Atlanta, then to Greenville, South Carolina, before driving through the snow to Athens, taking them down 59-55. So it's a big weekend, or a big week last week again, for the Commodores.
Yeah, absolutely huge. Two conference road wins back-to-back like that. Really not too much trouble in either win for the Doors. Started out on Sunday at Texas A&M. The final score of that game was Vandy 66, A&M 55. James Siakam, absolutely huge in this one, had a double-double with 22 points. And he hasn't been able to keep it up from game to game this year, but when he's on, boy, is he on, especially with that rebounding.
Yeah, he's a really interesting case. He's played a little bit last year. It was really only in the preseason exhibition. 17 points and 9 rebounds. Didn't play him for the rest of the year. His problem is that he's a power forward listed at 6'7". I saw him up at the pub earlier this week, probably only like 6'5", 6'6", but he is an extremely hard worker. He's going to get all the rebounds he can get. He runs into trouble when he faces big teams like Kentucky that has 3 7-footers. But when you're playing a team like Texas A&M, you can see just how important he is to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, huge rebounding from Siakam in this game. The combination of him and Damian Jones has big potential down low to score a lot of points and bring in a lot of boards for the Commodores. So far this year, rebounding, I think, was the number one problem on this team, especially defensive rebounding. And it's been corrected in the past 2 road games, so that's really good to see, especially away from home.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things is, of course, as we all know, Vanderbilt only has 7 scholarship players right now. And that's led to a lot of problems. They've had to switch to more zone defense, which they've struggled at. And it also means that 3 players, Rod Odom, Dejon Parker, and Kyle Fuller, are all playing 40 minutes per game. A lot. They have 12. The Vanderbilt team has 12 times that a player has gone all 40 minutes. In the rest of the SEC, only 1 player has done that, and he's from Alabama. And so this is really not good. Over the just past 2 games, Odom and Parker both played all 40 minutes in both games. Fuller went 36 minutes and got a short breather there against the Bulldogs, but that's probably going to be it's going to wear them down over the season at least.
And with all the traveling it took to get to the game in Athens, Georgia yesterday, you thought, especially for a road game that was so hard to get to, that would take a toll. But that wasn't the case. Commodores won 59-54, the final score of that one. Big game for Rod Odom, who's been the leader and the best player on this team all year, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when Siakam can get all the rebounds down low, it'll free Odom to go out to the perimeter where he's been shooting excellently. He shot 4 from 8, and then unfortunately 2 for 6, but that's a really good shooting percentage from downtown. Again, their defense has been huge. They held A&M to 33% shooting, Georgia to 27% shooting. So even if you're low on numbers, if you can play defense like that, that'll be good things for you.
The defense has been really the weakness for the Commodores, and if it can get strong, this team can go places. And really out of nowhere, the men's team has a 3-4 conference record, very respectable, especially for what they've been dealing with in terms of injuries, suspensions, guys been out. So it's really been good for this team so far this year to see what they've been able to do. Coming back home against Mississippi State this Saturday, as really an easy portion of the schedule continues for this team, looking to pick up as many wins as they can to gain some confidence moving forward, and I think they really did just that in the past week.
Yeah, and they've got 3 home games coming up. They've got Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Tennessee, so at least they won't have to travel anymore.
Yeah, Tennessee will be a big one too. That one's always fun.
But in terms of basketball teams that are doing well, we have the women's team. Now, unfortunately, they had a bit of a rough game over the weekend. They faced off for the second time against number 10 South Carolina. Barely lost at the end. Final score 61-57. We had a great game actually from Christina Fogey with 23 points.
As usual.
Yeah, the unfortunate part was Jasmine Lister only had 4 points, which was a season low for her.
Fogey really carried the load herself in that game, but without her partner in crime, the other half of the dynamic duo, Jasmine Lister, the Commodores could not win this one. dropping to 5-2 in conference. Both of those losses against South Carolina. So I'd say they're definitely looking forward to another shot at the Gamecocks in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, as a small personal plug, the reason Vanderbilt ended up losing was they were facing off against the great Tiffany Mitchell as we got up here. Went to my high school, Providence Day School, 14 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, and a block. Got the last 4 points that sealed the win for South Carolina. Don't worry, I was still rooting for Vanderbilt, but
Your heart was torn.
it was tough. People were yelling at me in the student section. But, I mean, this team still has 3 wins against ranked teams.
And Vanderbilt did not drop in the AP poll even after the loss, which is nice to see because this team has not been getting enough respect in the rankings. Still sitting at 16th, the Commodores are, with games against Missouri and a home game against Texas A&M this weekend. A&M, the only team to beat South Carolina in conference play this year. So that should be a fun matchup.
Yeah.
So great things looking forward for really both these basketball teams to seize opportunities. We're going to send it over now to the whiteboard for our newest segment.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda, and this is our newest segment, Big Deal or Not a Big Deal. So basically, I'm just going to give the guys a topic, and they're going to discuss whether they think it's a big deal or not a big deal. So for our first topic, Northwestern football players, led by Kane Coulter, have filed to have a College Athletics Player Association. Max, what do you think?
You know what? I think it's not a great idea. Ben, you think so?
Yeah, I have been very pro for, at the very least, paying athletes. So just to give a backstory here, Kane Coulter, who's a quarterback for Northwestern, killed us last year, scored the game-winning touchdown. He and a couple other players have filed, basically, I might butcher this a little bit, but the main story here is that they filed to create a players' union for college athletes. And the basics of what they want is they'd like coverage for medical injuries, especially ones that linger on past when they're in college, which sort of goes into the madness of concussion issues and head trauma, which both the NFL and college football has been kind of hesitant to cover. They'd like some portion, maybe not a big one right away, of the revenue that comes in from TV and stuff like that, and to be recognized as employees of the school, considering they're working ungodly hours during the year for the school to make hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think this is a huge deal. This isn't going to happen for 2 to 3 years because we still have to wait for the Ed O'Bannon case, which has to do with EA Sports and NCAA football video games to pan out. But there are changes on the horizon.
You know what? I'll meet you maybe in the middle of the road on this one, Ben. I don't think the players should be paid, but I think that they should have some of the rights that a players' union does provide. I think they deserve that medical care as athletes, but I think they should still be student athletes. And yes, they will be students. They will be athletes under this, but I don't think they'll be student athletes in the truest sense of the word, meaning that they will be being paid to play sports, which before coming into college, I may have agreed with. But knowing what the student life is like now and what collegiate athletes do from day to day, I don't know if they should be getting paid because they are getting scholarships, they are getting extra money for meals and stuff like that, stipends on the road. But I think they do deserve more medical rights, that's for sure. And either way, this may be inevitable, but we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, the problem I have with that is that they're getting paid in the form of an education, and it's an education they can't even fully take advantage of because they're putting in so much time to do other stuff. A lot of them aren't even qualified to be at schools like Vanderbilt, so we're paying them with something they can't even do. And they're making so much money for Vanderbilt that it seems a little ridiculous not to let them see a little bit of the profits they're making for the school.
Definitely. Yeah, and we'll see how that video game lawsuit pans out. That's an interesting one. So definitely potential big deal there.
I'm going to agree with Ben on this one. I think it could be a pretty big deal. All right, our next topic, Jordan Rogers wasn't allowed to have access to use the field and then sent some pretty angry tweets about it. Ben, what do you think?
So we had a nice 12-tweet rampage going on.
13.
13, oh man.
Yeah, we had the official stat count on there.
Yeah.
That was 13.
Well,
could have been 12. Somewhere between 12 and 13 for sure.
Yeah, so basically what happened is he's been working with different players who've been trying to train for their pro days, even some guys like Pat and Robinette, to just try and just work out in the facility that Jordan Rogers basically got established. He won 9 games with Vanderbilt. All of a sudden, football has come to prominence, and now the Vanderbilt's spending more money on an indoor facility. but since he's no longer a student here, he wasn't allowed access in, despite the fact that no one was using the field. This is somewhat of a big deal to me. I don't want to say all the way huge deal, just because Vanderbilt needs to treat their alumni well. I mean, if you want Jay Cutler and people like them to keep associating with Vanderbilt, you need to treat them well. As our producer Sam Wild pointed out, they treat baseball alumni very well. I mean, we see all sorts of players coming back. Vanderbilt really needs to make an effort to at least not piss off some of these former players.
I think, yes, he should be allowed to use the field, obviously, as an alumnus and a former athlete. But this is not even close to a big deal. This has nothing to do with the football program. This has nothing to do with James Franklin, Derek Mason, any future coaches of Vandy. This has nothing to do with David Williams. This has to do with someone who works at the Vandy Rec Center who didn't know who Jordan Rogers was. And he's not a student. He's not a member of the Vanderbilt Rec Center. So there's no way for him to get in by swiping his card or anything like that. It's just a matter of not knowing who his face was. If David Williams were there, I think he would have let him in. I think this has nothing to do with the football program. I think this has everything to do with Jordan Rogers making a big deal out of nothing. So I think if he really had just explained himself, he probably would have been let in. Obviously, we don't know the exact circumstance, but this is not even close to a big deal.
Yeah, I agree with Max. I think Jordan Rogers probably overreacted just a bit. Okay, our next topic. Austin Carter Samuels told us not to worry about the bad recruiting class because we can count on our freshman class. Max?
I agree with Austin Carter Samuels here that losing some potential recruits is not a big deal here because of all the players who were redshirted this past year, especially on defense. Carter Samuels, who you see there, who recently graduated from Vandy, tweeted that Vandy fans have nothing to worry about these recruits leaving. And with all the defensive players who were redshirted this year, many he named, I think these guys can fill the hole that we lose from not having as big of a recruiting class as these guys who are going to be, by NCAA standards, freshmen in their second year of college. I think these guys will be able to fill the void really well. And if there's any year when you're going to lose your players, lose your recruits, you're going to want guys who redshirted this year, who are just so hungry to play the game, who will be coming in to take their place. So I'm really not worried about this one.
So what's that?
So I'm saying it's not a big deal.
All right, yeah, I agree with you there. The funny thing about James Franklin's time at Vanderbilt is he used almost none of the players he recruited. The only guys that he recruited that played were Brian Kimbrough, Caleb Azubike, Jordan Cunningham, Darion Herring, Jake Seelan, Darius Sims. That's 6 guys. None of them played yet. We still haven't seen all these 4-star guys. Jay Woods, Johnny McCrary, my favorite, Nigel Bowden, all sorts of guys that still have to play. And furthermore, none of this recruiting class was even going to play next year. I remember there's only 6 or 7 guys that played in the last 2 years that played in their true freshman year. So it's not like they're even missing out on people this year. So I'm going to agree with Max and go no big deal here.
As long as we get back to normal recruiting patterns starting next season, I don't think we have anything to worry about.
The interesting thing about that is that Coach Mason's already reached out to 5 5-star recruits for next year. So the weird thing for the last month of Mason having to sort of pick up where Franklin left off in recruiting was his entire staff had not been in the SEC, and 2 of his assistants came from the NFL, so they didn't even have any sort of Southern roots. Next year they'll be fine though, and it could be an incredible recruiting class, really.
Yep, not a big deal.
All right then, for our final topic, James Franklin said that the Penn State players care more about academics than the Vandy players. What do you guys think?
Boy, James Franklin dug himself into a hole here. He went on in a press conference to say that Penn State values academics more than Vanderbilt does, and Vanderbilt's just a machine to crank out football players.
Vanderbilt only cares about football, nothing else here.
Which, I mean, well, to be fair, it's not like Penn State covered up any giant scandals for the sake of football. So at least he has that going for him. But, I mean, look at college rankings. I don't think Penn State cares more about academics. Actually, at one point in the press conference, he went on to say, he was talking about Penn State, but accidentally slipped in Vanderbilt there. So that really, it really seals the deal that he's really a salesman at heart. And if you want to go in a mean way, he's a kind of a carpetbagger. But, oh boy, I forgot what my answer was.
Think it's a big deal he's saying this or not a big deal?
I think it's a big deal because it's absolutely ridiculous what he's saying, and he knows it's ridiculous.
I think from the Vanderbilt perspective, this is not a big deal. We know he's wrong. We know Penn State, A, cares about football a whole lot more than Vanderbilt, and that Vanderbilt cares about academics a whole lot more than Penn State. Not only does Penn State exist mostly for football, the entire city of State College, Pennsylvania, exists for Penn State football.
It doubles in size on
Yeah.
Saturdays.
The city of Nashville would probably go on without Vanderbilt football. I'm going to go out on a limb there. So
I wouldn't, but Nashville.
we'll see. It'll never happen, so we don't have to worry about that. So I'd say from the Vanderbilt perspective, this isn't even close to a big deal. Whatever Franklin says at this point, we don't care. Wherever he is, he's going to say that place is the best. He's going to sell it, like you said. This is not a big deal from our perspective. He can say whatever he wants.
To me, this felt like a pretty big deal that he said it. I don't know, it kind of hurt, so I'm going with Ben, which means that Ben's our winner for the night.
Want to know this week?
Don't say that.
All right, we're going to send it over to the whiteboard now.
What's up, guys? I'm Sam Wild. Welcome to this week's episode of To the Whiteboard. This week, we're going to break down a play that the Commodores ran last night against Georgia. This specific play is called a pick and roll, which is generally, it's exactly what it sounds like. A player sets a pick and then rolls to the basket. Now, generally, you're going to want a big guy doing this play because he's a big body and sets a wide pick to allow for the separation that you're looking for on this play. So for the Commodores, that big man is going to be number 30, Damian Jones. The play is set up, Kyle Fuller passing the ball to the wing to Rod Odom. After this pass, Damian Jones comes around and sets the pick for Rod Odom. Damian Jones' man follows him this way, leaving two men on two men over here. What you want on this play, though, is the miscommunication on the pick, and that's exactly what happened. Rod Odom takes the pick and cuts in, and both defenders following him, leaving Damian Jones a free path to the rim. After the cut-in, Dejon Parker cuts over here to allow the pass for Rod Odom. And on this, we have Damian Jones flooding straight to the rim, and Dejon Parker hits him on the alley-oop pass for the proverbial touchdown. This is the pick and roll. It's Kevin Stallings' one of his most favorite plays to call, and one that has a lot of impact, both on the college level and the NBA level, and even on the high school level. So this has been this week's To the Whiteboard. I'm Sam Wild. Back to you guys.
All right, so we're going to welcome back to the show Callie Meisel for our next segment about tennis.
Thank you. This past weekend, Vanderbilt hosted the ITA kickoff tournament. Thanks to their big win last weekend against Marquette, Vanderbilt men's tennis team jumped from being ranked number 16 in the nation to being ranked number 15 in the nation, which put them as the number 1 seed for this tournament. They hosted Wake Forest, LSU, and the Texas Longhorns this weekend in the tournament. And first they were matched up against Texas, who was the 4th seed, but despite Vanderbilt's highly ranked players, they got Gonzalez Austin ranked number 9 in the nation. He was the number 1 seed in singles, and he and his partner Ryan Littman are ranked number 2 in the nation. So they were number 1 seed for this tournament again. But unfortunately, Vanderbilt lost 0-4 to Texas. It was a pretty big upset considering they were the lowest seed. But luckily, they were able to bounce back the next morning. They played LSU in the backdraw finals, and they pulled it out. They won 4-1. Most notably, I think that Gonzalez Austin had a huge day. He won a grueling 3-set match. Score was 6-1, 2-6, 6-3. Against LSU's number 72 ranked Chris Simpson, and he and his partner Ryan Littman, they also won their doubles match. They were the only doubles team to win a match, but the singles pulled through. They didn't lose a single match except for 2 matches which were left unfinished, because this past weekend was actually the first national tournament where they played with the new ITA rules for tournaments. So instead of playing for doubles, playing an 8-game pro set, they played first to 6 and a tiebreaker at 5-all, which is weird because usually you play a tiebreaker at 6-all. And for singles, it was the same thing, play to 6, which is what they usually do, but tiebreak at 5-all. And then you play a third set if they split sets, but unless the match was already finished, they felt that there was not a need to finish. So that's why 2 of those matches went left unfinished. So Vanderbilt ended up the consolation round finalists. And Wake Forest ended up winning the entire tournament against Texas 4-3 in the finals. But they'll be back again at home competing against Northwestern pretty soon, February 2nd actually, so this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, so tennis team has been doing pretty well in terms of all the Vanderbilt teams, but the one that's probably the best is Vanderbilt Baseball. They're starting off the year ranked number 10 by Baseball America, number
Pretty
11
good.
by Perfect Game. This looks like a team that's going to be very good next year.
I agree, and despite having only 2 starters who are returning, I definitely think it's going to be a promising season for them.
Yeah. So
Got some pretty notable players.
Yeah, so one of the weird things is they already lost 6 players to the draft. Kevin Zomek, Conrad Gregor, Tony Kemp, Yastrzemski, Harrell. They're missing a lot of players, but because they had back-to-back #1 recruiting classes in the nation, they have a lot of players left.
They do. The team's young, but I don't think that's going to hinder them for this season. Of course, they're going to build on that, but I still think that this is going to be a strong season, especially with Tyler Beatty being our first pitcher.
Yeah, he was a Golden Spikes finalist. And
Right.
The rest of the rotation's kind of unclear, but we know there's a lot of talented guys out there. We've got sophomores
Definitely.
Walker Bueller, Carson Fulmer maybe, junior Jared Miller. There's plenty of arms out there. And that's going to be the real strength of the team is there's lots and lots of pitching.
Right,
They've got 6 guys that can throw 95 miles an hour or more, so that's kind of intimidating, I'll be honest.
I think so too. I definitely think the other teams will agree with us, but yeah, I agree. Strong pitching, and I think coming off a pretty good season last year gives, of course, confidence is always necessary to winning. If you go out there tentative, you're not going to play to your potential. But I definitely think that Vandy baseball is going to look pretty good. They got the confidence, they got the pitching. Of course, they have the 2 back-to-back first-rated recruiting classes. I'm excited for the season. I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah, especially since basketball has been kind of shaky this year. It'll be nice for some warm weather, nice for some baseball, and
Exactly.
yeah. Now we'll get more into baseball later on when we get our full baseball preview, but just keep in mind, you may not know it, but this is Vanderbilt's best team, and they're going to be a lot of fun.
Their first game is Valentine's Day, actually. Unfortunately, they won't be home, but I know they have a series of home games coming up right after, so be sure to watch out for them. It's going to be an impressive season.
Yeah, so for Callie Meisel, Max Hers, Amanda and Sam and the rest of us in this crew, we'll see you next week on VU Sports Wired.